What does it take to make a house? One of history's greatest homes. Whether they're warm and cozy, or grand and drafty. When you're building your home, you're creating your own universe. And the most celebrated homes in history stood the test of time.
This is Hampton Court Palace. It was a place for fun and, above all, as you can see, of magnificence. This is a spectacular palace, even today.
We often describe it as an architectural autobiography. And so at Monticello, you get a true sense of the man.
I think that the point was to be ostentatious. This was the statement that they were trying to make, that they had made it, and they were going to let the world know that they were important.
Donc Fontainebleau est une ancienne résidence royale et impériale de France, une histoire très ancienne. Son histoire remonte au Moyen-Âge. Et donc l'histoire du château est quasiment millénaire.
You can imagine coming into this room in the evening or any time of day, and everybody who was anybody was here.
Two groups have always built great homes: the rich and the royal. They understood that a house of fame and acclaim can write your name in history. Royalty ruled Europe for centuries. The wealth and power of these dynasties was absolute. While the United States was founded on the rejection of royal governance, for America's rich and powerful, there has always been a deep fascination with the lives of these legendary families of the past. The name Vanderbilt recalls a bygone era, and this family of railroad tycoons built their legend with the help of some gargantuan homes.
My name is Trudy Cox, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer and Executive Director of the Preservation Society of Newport County, which takes care of 11 magnificent historic houses here in Newport, Rhode Island.
In the late 1800s, building a personal palace was the height of fashion. It's in these gleaming American castles that America's Gilded Age earned its name. And it all started here.
This is Marble House, and it was built by Alva Vanderbilt. Why is this called Marble House? Well, it is made with 500,000 cubic feet of marble. Alva Vanderbilt got this house as a 39th birthday present from her husband, William. He gave it to her with the opportunity of building whatever she wanted to build. Can you imagine?
Alva Vanderbilt was a woman who set trends and broke barriers. But her passion was for building grandiose houses.
When this house was being built, Alva Vanderbilt and her husband really had an aim, and that was to make a statement. And what other way to make a statement than to build a palace made out of marble? In the late 1880s, early 1890s, all of Newport was primarily a wooden community. And along comes Alva, and she is not going to build your typical colonial house. She is going to build something palatial. And she hires one of the best architects in the world, Richard Morris Hunt.
Richard Morris Hunt was the first American architect to attend the School of Fine Arts in Paris, the finest architectural school in the world at the time. He'd designed the pedestal for the Statue of Liberty, Fifth Avenue mansions in Manhattan, and if you could afford him, he'd do your home too. When construction began in 1889, 100 marble specialists were imported from Italy to make this dream home a reality. Alva wanted her mansion to make a mark in upper echelons of society. and add fame to her fortune. Marble House was intended to be her work of art, and she immersed herself in every aspect of the design.
Alva grew up in Mobile, Alabama, and during the Civil War, her family moved to Paris to escape the war. And while she was in Paris, she became a real Francophile. So this particular house is designed after the Petit Trianon of Versailles.
Alva insisted on white Tuckahoe marble for the exterior, but it proved too hard to shape. So, famed Carrara marble had to be used for the carved elements to finish this clean white exterior. The marble wasn't limited to the facade. When she set out to build a palace of marble, she meant it.
So she loved marble, obviously. Alva was very discriminating in her use of marble and her choices of marble, selecting colors, hues that were the right colors that she wanted for a particular room. We are surrounded by Sienna marble, which is from Italy. She went with this wonderful beige tan hue. I think it does add a warmth to the entranceway.
The main stairway is made of solid blocks of the same stone.
If you're going into the dining room, you're going to see a pink rose-colored marble that comes from Algeria. And the colors of the wall would have then the right kind of, cast the right kind of glow on a woman's face, which was, of course, very, very important. And so I think that she probably thought that that pinkish marble, that rosé-colored marble, was just absolutely perfect for an evening of dinner.
From the dazzling ballroom to the ornate bedrooms, each space was decorated with furniture from across Europe and personally chosen and positioned by Alva.
She had a lot of help, but she had a wonderful eye. This house is decorated perfectly. The Gothic room, tremendously unusual and unique. No room quite like it anywhere in America. That was Alva Vanderbilt saying, I'm going to bring an interior decorating style of medieval architectural ornamentation into my house with the Gothic room.
When it was finally finished 3 years after it began, the home was something of a sensation.
When the house was unveiled and finally seen by the public, people were obviously wowed. And in 1892, when the housewarming party was held, they strung electric lights all over the house and the property. Electrical lighting was still very new in this nation, in the world actually. And so that glimmering against the marble made a statement that, of course, was talked about in the New York Times and talked about internationally. Alva had made her statement.
But all this statement making came with an eye-watering price tag.
It's said that the house is about $11 million. It was very expensive, especially we're back to 1889, so that was a huge price. So I'm talking about $11 million then. Translate that out to today's dollars and it would be much higher.
This was a $300 million second home, only used during the summers for 5 or 6 weeks a year. So, how exactly did William K. Vanderbilt afford such an extravagance? The Vanderbilt family fortune came from a shipping and railroad empire. Built by William's grandfather, Commodore Vanderbilt, and father, William Henry. Their investments laid the foundation for what would become the vast New York Central system.
Just imagine having the vision to connect New York to Chicago by a new form of transportation, railroad. It dramatically changed this nation. It opened up parts of this country that had never been opened up before. Chicago exists because of that train system.
It also made them fabulously rich. Rich enough to live like American royalty. In castles, they called cottages. But Marble House took things to the next level for the Vanderbilts.
In a lot of ways, it started not just a trend, but maybe even a war. So right after this house gets built, William's brother, Cornelius, hires the same architect, Richard Morris Hunt.
Cornelius wanted Hunt to build him his own enduring work of architectural art. One that incidentally was a little bigger than his brother William's.
It is a bigger house. It's as palatial as this in a different way.
Dubbed the Breakers, it was Cornelius's castle by the sea. Breakers is open and airy, has incredibly high ceilings, beautiful interiors, and ocean views in almost every direction. And at a mere $7 million, or around $200 million today, it was a bargain. And this war of the houses didn't stop here.
The Elms is built, Rosecliff is built, magnificent mansions are built in Newport, completely changing the feel of this community. This is where people from New York come for their summers, people with money. And that was the beginning of a new reputation for Newport, Rhode Island.
It wasn't only holiday houses. Between 8 siblings, the Vanderbilts built 10 mansions on Fifth Avenue alone. And the biggest house in America, Biltmore, was commissioned by George Washington Vanderbilt and designed by, you guessed it, William Morris Hunt.
I think the Vanderbilts were prolific builders of homes really because they were very much trying to send a message to the world. They were the richest people in this country. I think that they wanted to show the world that they were worth something. And one way to do that, just like in Europe, hundreds of years ago, the way to do that is to build the fanciest house you can build and buy the nicest objects for your houses that you can buy.
If you're a little stunned by the sheer lavishness of these places, you're not alone.
I think that the point was to be ostentatious, and I think that it was understood even by the people who didn't have that kind of money, and perhaps there was resentment. But you have to step back for a moment and say, these are beautiful houses. They're beautiful pieces of architecture.
Though Marble House is still standing 130 years on, William and Alva's marriage didn't last quite so long.
Alva lived in this home, but not for very long. She was one of the first high society women in the country to file for a divorce. And then about a year later, she married a man down the street, Mr. Belmont, and he owned Belcourt Castle. And she moved herself into the new location, held on to Marble House though.
When she moved, Marble House was boarded up and neglected for decades.
In her later years, after her divorce, she became a leading suffragette, arguing for women's right to vote. Alva Vanderbilt opens up this house for people to take tours and then held rallies out on the lawn facing the Atlantic Ocean. And thousands of women would come to these rallies. In 2020, we celebrate women's right to vote, passed 100 years ago, and it's due in large part to Alva.
The glory days and the Gilded Age could not last. As their spending grew and their businesses declined, the Great Depression hit hard. Their Fifth Avenue mansions were torn down, and the Newport mansions sold off. When Alva finally sold Marble House in 1932, the sale price was $100,000, or less than a penny on every dollar it had taken to build. The Vanderbilt empire crumbled. But thanks to organizations like the Newport Preservation Society, we're still able to enjoy these iconic homes. America's richest built business empires that made their families wealthy for generations. They built homes to reflect the power and magnificence of their fortunes, and to last long after they were gone. But the dynasties the rich strove for, European royalty had already invented. And the great castles of Europe reveal family stories that are as old as nations.
Donc je m'appelle Jean Vité, je suis conservateur au château de Fontainebleau. Donc Fontainebleau est une ancienne résidence royale et impériale de France. Son histoire remonte au Moyen-Âge. Et donc l'histoire du château est quasiment millénaire.
It was the year 1137 that the Chateau Fontainebleau made its sudden entrance into the annals of history with a stroke of Louis VII's quill. Fontainebleau took its name from the freshwater spring near the original settlement. But it was the forests that drew royalty here. When the first kings came to Fontainebleau, they came to hunt.
Fontainebleau était une résidence de repos et de plaisance, puisque c'était une résidence qui était liée à la chasse. Puisque c'est une résidence qui est dans la forêt et donc qui permettait aux souverains de se divertir, de se reposer, des fatigues de Versailles ou de Paris.
A love for the sport of kings ensured the chateau was bequeathed down through generations of royalty. But Fontainebleau has always been more than just a place to get away.
Fontainebleau était une résidence de plaisance. Alors, c'était une résidence officielle. C'est une résidence gouvernementale dans laquelle le souverain travaille, il peut signer des actes, rendre des actes officiels.
Over its long history, the chateau received honored guests, hosted celebrations, influenced culture, and served as the stage for diplomacy and politics.
Les résidences royales, les résidences impériales, bien évidemment, étaient destinées à en montrer plein la vue aux visiteurs. C'était des marques de manifester, des preuves de la puissance du souverain, etc., et de la richesse du souverain.
From relatively humble beginnings, over the centuries, Fontainebleau underwent a gradual transformation.
Chaque souverain a voulu apporter sa contribution à la splendeur du château, pour des raisons de prestige, pour des raisons d'agrément aussi du château. Beaucoup de souverains ont apporté leur contribution à l'histoire architecturale du château.
François I built grand galleries inspired and designed by Italian Renaissance artists. Henry IV had major fountains embellished and created a vast canal, which became a spectacular setting for grand occasions. Louis XIII's architect added the iconic horseshoe-shaped staircase. Louis XIV preferred Versailles to Fontainebleau, but he still found time to have the gardens redesigned. Louis XVI built Marie Antoinette's stunning boudoirs, supreme examples of the refinement of the Queen's private tastes. Fontainebleau was long celebrated as a cultural capital of the kingdom. But during the terror of the French Revolution, extravagant palaces were considered a little passé. But a certain general would bring the chateau back into style.
Ici, nous sommes dans la pièce la plus importante du château de Fontainebleau. Avant de devenir la salle du trône de Napoléon, la pièce a surtout été la chambre du roi. Depuis le XVIIe siècle, ça a été la chambre de tous les rois de France, ce qui explique la somptuosité de son décor. Le décor mural, donc, remonte à Louis XIII, à Louis XIV, à Louis XV.
Napoleon Bonaparte first visited Fontainebleau in 1803. Napoleon loved its lack of symmetry and its centuries of history. He called it the true abode of kings. And after his coronation, the newly crowned emperor resolved to make Fontainebleau his imperial palace.
La salle du trône que vous voyez donc avait été conçue par les architectes de l'empereur, sont inspirés de ce qu'étaient d'anciennes salles d'apparat de l'Antiquité et de l'époque romaine. Voilà. Donc la salle s'inspire de l'Antiquité romaine.
Living in a castle, you can admire the beauty, soak up the luxury, or revel in the comfort they provide. But at their core, they're about more than just showing off. They're all about power.
Il n'y avait pas dans la tradition française beaucoup de salles du trône. Mais Napoléon, évidemment, a récupéré à son profit l'idée impériale. L'idée impériale qui était celle de Charlemagne, qui était celle de l'Antiquité. Ce sont des idées qui lui ont beaucoup plu, donc il a récupéré à son profit, et de ce fait, il a créé des salles du trône dans les palais impériaux. Et donc vous avez donc de chaque côté du trône de grandes tiges qui portent le chiffre de Napoléon et l'aigle, l'emblème du pouvoir impérial. Voilà.
With most of life spent on military campaigns abroad or playing politics in Paris, Napoleon made only 3 official imperial visits to his palace. His final visit was in 1814, where he signed an act of unconditional abdication. Napoleon I would return to France, but never to Chateau Fontainebleau. His nephew, Napoleon III, would eventually succeed him here, but he was to be the last French monarch. While the Vanderbilts were building their American empire, the time of French kings and emperors was ending. But from a palace steeped in centuries of national and royal significance, to mansions that take us back to a unique time and place, together, the rich and the royal built some of history's greatest homes. Over the great sweep of history, dynasties end and fortunes disappear. But these architectural and cultural achievements, cherished and preserved, live on.